Welcome back, players. I'm Jack with 36 Cancel, and this is Coco the Wise Cat. Not long ago, Konosuba Legend of Crimson dropped in English, and with it came several new deck possibilities for each of our main heroines using totally new tools, but it also introduced a whole new deck that we can build based on one of my favorite new characters from the universe, and that's Sylvia, our favorite chimera and woman after Kazuma's own heart. Well, sort of. Now, Sylvia, like many of the baddie factions in Weiss, is represented in blue with tools to build her own blue enemy faction deck. In Weiss 4s, these are typically decks centered around known factions or enemies in the title, like the Titans in Attack on Titan or the Anti-Spiral in Gurren Lagann, and typically, these cards represent only a small part of the overall set, and while they're interesting to play in their own right, they typically lack the diversity to build outside a pre-existing shell. These kinds of decks will typically lack the more conventional tools and combos of your typical Weiss deck and instead be centered around a single idea or combo. After all, these are enemy factions, but Sylvia is different. Sylvia, unlike many of the enemies we can play in Weiss 4s, actually got her own very unique and diverse toolkit to work with. Instead of some generic level 0s that we can play in any amount, she got her own bag of tricks with a cool level 0 kit, a real combo at level 1 and 3, and plenty of cool tech. And it's all super in flavor for Sylvia, who we know is all about those body mods and big dick power. So naturally, on the Weiss stage, we can add a lot to Sylvia and make her bigger. But she's also into Kazuma, which is why many of her cards are keyworded to work with both her own toolkit and any character with Kazuma in the name. And since Kazuma has plenty of tech across 3 sets now, this leaves us with a lot of cool possibilities on how to build this deck. It makes for a super interesting and surprisingly consistent and powerful package, so I definitely want to tech the Sylvia and Kazuma deck for you players at home. Ironically, this may be the Konosuba deck that has the largest showing of Kazuma out of all of them, so let's talk about it. Right away, we see that we've got a pretty diverse toolkit in front of us. Sylvia, instead of getting the run-of-the-mill treatment with enemy faction decks, has her own toolkit with more conventional abilities. In fact, much like the usual strats, she has a diverse package at 0, her own level 1 and level 3 advantage combo and finishing combo, 2 different level 3s, and of course some support from Kazuma that both comes out of the new set and draws from the old. The level 0 is a great example of this. In total, Sylvia got her own 3 unique zeros with good abilities on them. Let's check them out. First up, we have Composed Retreat Sylvia. At 3k, she has 2 abilities, a drawback and a running effect. During the attack phase, you can't return characters from your hand to the waiting room, so we can't play Gates or Choice. Oh, the horror. And second, she has a rather odd running ability. At the beginning of your opponent's attack phase, if this card is in the middle position of your center stage, move this card to an open position of your center stage. So it's compulsory if she's in the center middle and inactive if she's not. That's definitely a strange one, but it still messes with your opponent's board a little bit if they want to try to take it out, and she's 3k, so it's not a bad choice at all. Second up, we have Chasing Down Sylvia. 2k gets plus 1500 on play, and the character in front of her can't move, so she's a level 0 killer. She locks a character in place and climbs over it, pretty much making her an even trade in any scenario. She also has some fringe synergy with our compulsory runner since she makes your opponent's board a little tougher to maneuver, but mostly she's there to do what Sylvia does, which is get big and do damage. The last of Sylvia's unique level 0s is actually her own Brainstormer. On play, if you have 2 or more Devil King's Army or Kazuma characters, draw 1 and pitch 1 for a free filter, and then she's a tap self-search Brainstormer for DKA or Kazuma. Honestly, pretty solid. A lot of the enemy faction Brainstormers have strict limits on what they can get, like Nia or the Beast Titan, but Sylvia is just her own girl. Not to say she doesn't need her man. Kazuma is here to support her. In fact, we've got 3, count 'em, 3 level 0 Kazumas, 1 from each of the Konosuba sets. Starting with Kazuma, the OG, just 1k, and when he comes in you can pay 1 and pitch 1 to top check 3 for any card. It's nice to be running some of these to filter for climaxes or events to give us more mobility to move through our deck. He's a cool support piece from the original Konosuba set. From the second Konosuba set, we've got Snipe Kazuma. At 500 power, he's a level 0 stock bomb, and he has a second ability when he's reversed. You can choose a card in your opponent's clock, put it in the waiting room, and then they put the top card of their deck into their clock. So this can snipe out cancels and possibly lock your opponent out of a color if you hit something juicy. Even though he's good enough to go in any Konosuba deck, he still has a special place here with Sylvia. And speaking of their unbroken bond of love, Kazuma makes his feelings clear with straightforward Confession Kazuma, his new tech from Legend of Crimson. 2k, and at the start of your climax phase, you can give a DKA or Kazuma plus 500 power, but we really play him for his second ability. You can pay 1 and put him under a Sylvia as a marker, then you top check 4 for a level 1 or higher card, and add it to hand. It makes for an excellent filter that can also grab events, which we play, and the effect is super in flavor. Sylvia can also do a lot with markers because we know she's into those body mods, which makes this Kazuma a great way to transition right into the level 1 game. We've got 4 players here, 2 Sylvias, 1 Kazuma at home at Sylvia's tits, and 1 event. One of them is our main level 1 combo though, so let's hash it out. Result of Cynthia's and modifications Sylvia. When she comes in, look at the top 2, choose DKA or Kazuma character or an event called Devil King's Army Invades, and put them under her as markers. Put the rest in the waiting room. At base 4k, she gets another plus 1k for every marker, and as for her combo, with a blue stock soul, when you reverse a battle opponent, you can pay 1 and put the climax from your climax zone into the waiting room. If you do, search your deck for up to 2 characters with DKA or Kazuma. Now, there are a few things you'll notice right off the bat that are different from the conventional level 1 combo. First, it requires you to sacrifice the climax, meaning you can't do this more than once a turn, but also that it's a plus 2 instead of a plus 1. This has a few implications. So instead of reversing one lane to get one card, now you only have to reverse one lane to get 2 cards. In a lot of ways, this adds a lot of consistency to your combo. You can also send your climax to the waiting room early, letting you reshuffle with it if you're low on cards in deck. One other thing to note is that stock souls are auto abilities, meaning that if you send the climax to the waiting room, your attackers don't lose the plus 1 soul. All in all, this is a pretty neat way to design a combo, and Sylvia's got some awesome support for it too. For example, this other level 1, Devil King's Army Invades, Sylvia. When she comes in, you can pitch a card and salvage an event called Devil King's Army Invades, hence the name. But second, on attack, she gives another character plus 500 times X, where X is characters, thus boosting your level 1 combo if need be. It's super useful for filtering and gives more consistency to an already consistent combo, and Sylvia is packing no shortage of ways to get power and climb over the competition, including that event we just picked up, Invasion of the Devil King's Army. 1/1 and rest a character, give a character plus 3k and then search out a DKA or Kazuma from your deck. Now, resting a character can be pretty brutal, but in our case, we're lucky that our back row is flexible. Our Brainstormer only rests itself, and we have level 0 Kazumas that don't need to be standing to use their abilities. And of course, Pinpoint Search and Power fits our profile perfectly. Now, one last addition at level 1, Sought After Paradise Kazuma. He's a 1/1 backup for 1500, but he has another effect. When you use his backup, you can choose a card called Sought After Paradise Kazuma in your waiting room and put it under a character with Sylvia in its name as a marker. Now remember, some of our key Sylvia cards gain power from markers, so this is extra power for free. And to clarify, because the cost of using a counter ability is to put the card in your waiting room, the backup will be in the waiting room when it comes time to resolve the effects. So you don't have to have another copy of the card in your waiting room to get a marker, you can choose the same card you used. Not only is this effectively more free power, it's free compression. You also don't have to choose the same character you back up to put the marker under, so your opponent can't cheat you out of it by switching up their attack order. What's more, this is the kind of super flavorful interaction between cards that reflect their source material in a really cool way that draws me to Weiss Wars in general, so true to form, it's super fun and super fitting. It's a great way to close out the level 1 and move right along to the level 2. We've only got one card, and it's another Sylvia. Burn to Nothingness Sylvia gives your center middle character the ability that it can't be chosen by your opponent's effects. She also gives your other DKA or Kazuma characters plus 1k, and finally you can rest her and pitch a card to give a DKA or Kazuma plus 2500 until the end of your opponent's next turn. This is a super good back row for us, especially since we're packing in early play. Since you won't be using her third ability often, she also makes a great target to rest for the DKA Invasion event too. She offers a lot for this deck in one little package, and it's a small wonder that she's the only card that made the cut for the level 2 game. So that leaves level 3. We've got both an early play and a finisher for Sylvia, so let's have a look at this early play. Droopy Temptation Sylvia. She's a 4 or more character early play that heals on entry. Already pretty good, but she's got another ability. When she's reversed, you can pay 2 and pitch a card. If you do, choose 2 DKA or Kazuma characters and put them face up under her as markers. Then choose a Synthesis with Mage Killer Sylvia in your waiting room and put it on the stage as rest in this card's position with this card and all other markers under it as markers under the change target. So in essence, when you lose your early play, you can choose to play your finisher in its place. And since discarding a card is part of the cost, it doesn't matter if Synthesis with Mage Killer Sylvia is in your hand or in your waiting room, and on top of that, you get 2 more free markers from your waiting room that will give your finisher more power, and again, help your compression by taking characters out of your waiting room. This is an amazing early play for us that transitions directly into our finisher, so let's have a look at Synthesis with Mage Killer Sylvia. At base 10k, she gets plus 3k, and then plus an additional 500 power for each marker she has. So if you use that change ability, she comes out at a massive 14,500 power. And of course, with the other effects that can give Sylvia markers, she only gets bigger. But after that, she's all combo. With her Pants Climax, once per turn, at the end of her attack, if you have 4 or more other characters, you can pitch 2 cards in your hand and put the Climax from your zone into the waiting room. If you do, stand this card. So a restander. And again, some notes on how this combo works. Obviously, since putting the Climax in the waiting room is part of the cost, it can't be done more than once. A big difference from the previous combo though is that the Pants Climax is a 1k1 and thus is a continuous effect that no longer works once it leaves the Climax zone. So when you use this effect, all your characters will lose that power and soul. Now the interesting thing about this is that you can use this to your advantage to swing for more pinpoint damage, and you don't have to reverse a battle opponent to perform this effect. So you can do this on an empty stage and then burn the Climaxes not to overswing while still getting 4 attacks in. Overall, this isn't the strongest finisher in the game, but it's a great profile for a restander, gets super big, and has a flexible combo that can adapt to any game state. I really like it. Well, that caps out the deck, and while the lines at play are pretty obvious, there are a few things I want to tell you about playing it. First, keep careful track of those markers. It's very easy to keep putting stuff under Sylvia and laughing at your opponent, but it's also easy to get things stuck under her that you'll be looking for later. Watch out that you don't put all your level 3s under that level 1. But speaking of markers, man, let me tell you something about this deck. It can compress like no one's business. If you keep those level 1s alive with Kazuma backups, and then move even one of them to the back row before the big hitters come out, you can easily end up with a deck with 25 cards and 8 climaxes in it out of nowhere. The deck isn't incredibly stock heavy, it takes characters out of the waiting room every turn, and you have unlimited filtering options to get climaxes out of your hand and stock if you choose smart attack orders. Compression is really what makes this deck scary. By mid-game, you can just have turn after turn of double and triple cancels if you play conservatively, and you can also move through the deck like crazy with your Kazumas and Brainstormers. Though, on that note, the deck is incredibly weak to win triggers, so if you're up against 8 win Persona, don't put all your markers under one Sylvia. Other than that, playing the deck conservatively in general, it'll really shock you how consistent it can be and how compressed it can get. So go out there and make some players salty with Sylvia. Alright, that's where I'm going to wrap it up, players. Sylvia got an amazing deck in the Konosuba movie set. It's super fun to play and more competitive than you may think. So remember, if you feel something nudging against your butt telling you to try out the Sylvia deck, it's really...